everyone, the lack of constant electricity supply in Nigeria continues to cause adverse effects on the country's businesses, with some companies already overspending to access power supply. Now, despite being one of the major global oil producers, Nigeria continues to face increasing power supply constraints, which is largely attributed to corruption in the energy sector. Now, the government is, however, initiating measures to address the electricity short supply in the West African nation, but it seems not everyone is convinced. Here's more details of that in this report.
Emmanuel Ngbebu manages this water bottling company in Abuja. He says operations depend heavily on electricity, but an unstable supply has greatly affected the business.
There are some times where the power outages stay more than a day. There are sometimes up to a week. And those times, the company go through a lot of overhead costs trying to power our production line. And that has really lowered our profit and also slowed down the production, because within this period of time, most times we do meet up with demands.
For decades, Nigeria has struggled to distribute more than an average of 4,000 megawatts per day for its growing population that has now surpassed 200 million people. This is far short of the required 200,000 megawatts, and this has been largely blamed on corruption and misuse of funds in the power sector. Millions of Nigerians use petrol and diesel power generators like this as alternative sources of power, usually at very high costs. The World Bank says businesses across the country have lost over $200 billion in the last 8 years as a result of power failure. The government is aiming to increase energy supply to 30,000 megawatts per day in the next 8 years. It launched an energy transition plan in August that will see an additional 5,300 megawatts of solar power injected into the national power grid annually. It intends to install solar mini-grids that will generate enough power for 25 million Nigerians. This is also aimed at ending the use of petrol and diesel generators in the country, a plan energy experts say may not be achievable within that period.
We've only added one major generating plant in the last 10 years, and that's the Azura power plant. So are we now saying that in the next 10 years we're going to add an additional 17,000 megawatts, because right now we have about 13,000 megawatts of installed capacity, but we're only averaging 4. Looking at those projections, a number of things would have to happen for that to take place.
Experts say the government needs to stabilize the national electricity grid. It collapsed at least 8 times in 2022 alone due to low gas supply.
We need to understand fully how we stabilize our grid first and foremost before we start injecting different sources into the grid. And it's up to, the government to figure out a way to engage and encourage the private sector to come on stream and to be able to invest in the power sector, because without their investments, we're not able to move this sector forward.
The government is already seeking at least $10 billion financial support for the power sector from countries like the US and Canada. It has already received a pledge of $1.5 billion from the World Bank. Business owners like Emmanuel say stable electricity supply will help them significantly cut down their operating costs